Hello and welcome everyone to this month's CloudBytes. It's the Release 4 2021 highlights hosted by Dean Dorton. Presenting today is Philip Massey, our Software Services Director Extraordinaire. We will be covering, like I said, the Release 4. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the chat feature at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We will be monitoring it throughout the presentation and we'll make sure to share any technical questions with our presenters at the end. If we do not address your question during today's presentation, contact information is included at the end of the materials, so please reach out after as needed. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you at the end of this week. Also, there will be a polling question at the beginning of this presentation, so please either join by text or by internet browser, and you can text Dean Dorton to 22333 or by joining www.pollev.com/Dean Dorton. Thank you so much for joining us today. Do not hesitate to ask questions, and without further ado, I give you Philip Massey.
All right, Julia, thank you very much. Appreciate that introduction there, and I'm excited to be here with you guys today. It is that time again. It is release time for Intacct. I tell you, it's hard to believe that we have made our way to the 4th release of 2021. You know, it seems like just 15 years ago, 2020 started, and we're here at the end of 2021, and this last release in November. So glad to talk with you guys before you get all the turkey and L-tryptophan in your system, and we all sort of veg out and forget everything that we've talked about. But happy to be here today. So let's get started. With every CloudByte that I do with these updates and release notes and things like that, I want to remind you of the concept of the preview company. So before we get into this, I just want to remind you about these preview companies. If you're sitting there thinking, hey, this is great, I can use all these new features, it's wonderful, but how do I turn them on? Then the preview company is for you. It's an opportunity for you to enroll. Intacct will take a snapshot of your production organization and put it out there with the new features and functions for you to play with prior to the actual release. You can see here, I'd keep these dates kind of in mind for the preview subscription deadlines, but honestly, go ahead and send Kim Denton on our team an email now and ask to be included in the preview release schedule. It's my understanding with those previews, if you ask now, you will be included in release 1 of 2022 and going forward, as long as you actively use the preview company. So if you get the R1 company and you don't go into it, you won't be on release 2. If you log into it and you click around, you'll be enrolled in release 2 as well. So preview companies are great, highly recommend them. And here's your chance to jump in and answer the one poll question that we're going to have today is, have you requested and used a preview company before? And again, you can go to pollev.com/Dean Dorton, or you can text Dean Dorton to 22333 and then answer either A, B, or C. So I'll give you a minute here on this. I like to know, just for my sake, if folks are subscribing to these preview companies. So we'll give it a minute here, and hopefully it is working. Okay. All right. So a couple of responses there. Real quick, guys, text Dean Dorton to 22333 and then either A, B, or C, or go to polev.com/Dean Dorton. Uh-oh, we've got a few folks that have been under a rock and didn't know about them until today. Well, that's why I bring it up at every one of these sessions. So preview companies, and even if you didn't understand what I said today as far as what it is, Kim's going to love me for this, but email Kim Denton, and she will help you get that set up, get you into that preview company, and then you'll have a sandbox of sorts to look at the new features. And by the way, for a period of time, you'll have a sandbox to look at existing features as well. So take advantage of this. It's a great way to get someplace to play around. All right, wonderful. Thank you all so much for that. So let's get into what you came here for. We're going to talk about all the new features and functions of Release 4 2021, and this is an exciting release. More than happy and thrilled to be here talking with you about it. We're going to start things off with inventory. We're going to go to taxes from there, Salesforce, cash management, reporting, AP, AR, and finish it off with the good old general ledger changes that have been made. All right, so let's jump into the inventory changes. Now, one of the big things that they've done in this release is admittedly to kind of curtail companies that have been sort of trying to game the system or potentially doing something that they might not should do, right? So they've made some changes around disabling the inventory module. So please, by all means, ask us, shoot an email to Kim, shoot an email to support, what have you. If you've got questions about the inventory module, there have been a lot of companies apparently that have been turning it on, doing a little bit of configuration and then turning it back off so that they don't get charged for it, and trying to game the system that way to get some configuration that maybe they need, but didn't really need full-blown inventory for. So they've made it much more difficult, and in fact, in a lot of cases now, if you turn inventory on, it cannot be turned back off. So, and that's a good general rule for Sage Intacct. Don't ever be afraid to contact us and ask us a question. Hey, what happens if I do this? Or what happens if I do that? We're happy to answer those questions for you, of course, no charge, and just talk about what the modules are, what the modules can do for you, what does clicking this button do, what does clicking that button do, as far as enabling and subscribing to certain components. So, you know, please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions about it. And here's a couple more slides, a couple more things that to talk more about why people enabled inventory and then turned it back off. So really, again, just trying to get to some of the features of inventory like the custom unit of measure schedules and things like that, that you only can get to with the inventory module enabled. So certainly there again, just ask us if you have any kinds of questions about any of the modules and things like that. The point here above and beyond this too is that they are examining all of the modules that are out there, and they are making it more difficult to skirt around certain things or do certain things that normally would require the subscription to the module. Okay, so any questions about anything, please let us know. The last thing we want is for you to get a bill for something you don't need. So there were some name changes in the inventory module. Kitting has been renamed to kits, light assembly to stockable kits, and enable grouping was renamed to enable kitting. So they're working on cleaning up the nomenclature on the inventory side. They're working on matching that on the order entry side as well, so that we've got one full industry standard naming convention throughout the distribution modules, inventory, order entry, and purchasing, right? So all of those apply, okay? We got some new options for inventory on-hand calculation settings. So Intacct in this latest release has given the end customer more control over what quantity available really means. So as it says in that second bullet point, you can determine whether the quantity available calculation includes on order, in transit, or both. Okay. Some of the reasons for changing it, you know, these days with ships stuck in canals and off coasts and ports and unable to dock, lead times have skyrocketed. Last year I ordered a couch. It took 7 months to get the couch. We ordered a new refrigerator to replace the one we have. Our existing one isn't dead, thankfully, but we did order a new one, and that was about 7 weeks ago, and there's still no date determined for when that new refrigerator is going to be available. So lead time on things is getting incredibly long, and in that case, then you may or may not want to include those on order quantities because you don't know when you're going to get them. So they're trying to give you a more real-time, a more realistic look at your inventory by allowing you to make adjustments for what you consider to be quantity available. So there's a couple of new checkboxes in configuration for inventory as to whether you want to include the quantity on order, and you can see the checkbox in the bottom right corner of that window. By default, this box will be enabled, and it's required if you are converting over as a customer to be enabled by default. And then you will be able to go in and have more control over whether the on order is checked or not, part of your available inventory. Then also in the warehouse transfers area of inventory, there is now a checkbox to include the quantity in transit. So again, it's two separate things. You're talking about quantity on order coming from a supplier or quantity on transit moving from one warehouse to the next, okay? You know, certainly you probably got more control over in transit time, transfers out, transfers in of inventory than you do what is coming from a supplier. So they did break those out and make those separate choices. Here's a couple of examples of including it, and you can see on top there you've got 3 on order, 0 in transit, 12 on hand, 3 on hold, -3 on hold, so you've got 18 available, 3 on order at the bottom, 12 on hand, 15 available, right? So shows you the difference in what you'll see when you do or don't check those boxes. And then here again, same type thing with in transits and those showing up as well, okay? So a couple of changes there on the inventory side. A lot of what's in the inventory is really just trying to clean the module up at this point and get it prepared for what's coming down the pike. Lots of conversations at the recent Transform conference about upcoming changes to inventory with some of the modular and industry initiatives that they have. So I definitely expect to see some very cool and very exciting features coming down the pike for the inventory module. It's going to be a big focus of the folks at Intacct. Okay. So let's talk about taxes. And thankfully, we're not talking about this in February or March or April, right? So this isn't income taxes. This is, of course, going to be the international taxes, the GSTs, and so forth. It's going to be, tax schedules inside of the Sage Intacct solution. Taxes for all customers in all countries now support accrual or cash and accrual. Still does not support cash only companies right now. So no cash reporting on taxes or cash basis tax submissions, although it is a possibility for the future. It is something they have their eye on, right? So you cannot do cash-based tax reporting at this point still. So here we have input tax schedule map information. So, this is a screen here where we've got kind of a few things condensed in Sage Intacct and really pulling a lot of that tax schedule information into one location. So this is nice for those of you that especially will have the international taxes that need to be processed. The applicable update of non-accounting fields when the books are closed. So this is an enhancement in the APAR and GL area. And you'll be able to go in and change or update fields that don't affect taxes, even after the tax submission has been filed. So things like memos, due dates, on hold, attachments, descriptions, reference numbers, you'll be able to go back in and make changes according to all the other rules inside of Intacct as to when you can make changes. But you'll be able to go back and make changes potentially to taxed transactions, even when even when the period has been closed. Okay, sorry about that. I clicked the wrong button there. Pre-installed tax solutions have been modified. Changes what is defaulted for new customers. So again, here we're getting into some of the things that have been included as tax solutions from an international tax standpoint with your VAT taxes and those types of things. They give you some more pre-installed options under the VAT taxes. Removing the company level constraint. So you don't have that company level constraint in the VAT taxes anymore. And it is, as it says here, part of a bigger project to improve usability of the overall tax setup. Okay. So that's nice to see. They're doing a lot of work on the internationalization of Intacct and being able to capture the VAT transactions that would need to be captured, the GST, HST, things like that. So Canadian companies, I don't think we have anyone using the Canadian taxes that's on the line here, but just for sake of the recording, they now support the tax submission for Canada through the Compliance Cloud. So that's getting more in line with what Canadian authorities are requiring and how they are requiring the tax information to be filed and processed in order to be compliant in in Canada. UK tax submissions, same type of thing. I don't think we have anyone that's using this, but just for sake of the recording, there's a couple of things here. AP adjustments now fully support the reverse charge. In the past, it wouldn't handle that negative line. So for those folks that might be using the UK tax solution, that's certainly welcome news. And you can now auto apply credits and it'll reverse the charge tax to the tax line rather than the amount line. Okay, so two big changes there for the UK tax submission, and then we have here some examples of that. Okay. All right, so let's jump ahead here to Salesforce or Advanced CRM Integration. Big thing that they've added this time is the statistical, and I always have a hard time saying that for some reason, statistical journal entry sync. So it gives support for syncing statistical journal entries from Salesforce to Sage Intacct, statistical accounts and journals. You can create separate journal entries or accounts for opportunities won or opportunities lost, and then report on those metrics in Intacct. So here you have cases where if you have the Salesforce integration to Intacct, for example, you could write a 1, a debit of a 1 to an account, a statistical account, for an opportunity that you may have won. Or conversely, a 1 to an account for an opportunity that you may have lost. And again, keep in mind, you've got the ability here to break these out over different dimensional values and all of that. So this really can ramp up the kinds of reporting that you can have between Salesforce and Sage Intacct. So it's a very nice feature for them to have. There's a checkbox on the screen, as you can see here in this little red square area, rectangular area, and you simply need to check that box during the configuration for the mapping details to let the system know that it is statistical. And again, you know, of course, that is important because statistical journal entries do not have to balance, regular journal entries do. So we want to make sure that whatever you have down for being a statistical entry, that box is checked. So then here we come over to inside of Sage Intacct and we go into the Advanced CRM Integration window or module into the configuration of it. And you do have to select the statistical accounts to sync with Salesforce as well as the statistical journals to sync with Salesforce. So if you're using this tool, it's a really nice thing to have. You do a little bit of setup in Salesforce to say that it is a statistical entry that's being made. You do a little bit of work in Intacct to determine which statistical accounts and journals will be included in it. And then you are really off to the races with it. It will start counting your opportunities and so forth and making those entries, statistical entries, over into Sage Intacct so that you can reflect them on dashboards. So cash management. So draft match for draft journal entries created from the bank fee transactions and imported bank transactions. So you can have a draft match transaction in the system now. Creating a draft journal entry and place it in a draft match status, links the draft journal entry and the bank rec together to avoid confusion and duplication. Okay. Ultimately, to reconcile it, you do need to make sure that you post the journal entry. So a new feature there in the bank reconciliation part that coincides with bank feeds and imported bank transactions, things of that nature. So really nice feature there. The need cash books for credit card transactions. The business need is client wants cash to be posted prior to the payment when using a cash book. So it applies to cash only or cash and accrual company types. So accrual companies only, accrual only companies do not need this feature. Can only be enabled after everything has been paid, and recommended separate journal entry to post the entry. And I think that's good, just good business practice to keep it separate so that you've got good traceability on it, you've got a good audit trail, so to speak, and you're really able to dig into the details of it if something were to post incorrectly. So it has, here's the configure cash management screen for companies using cash and multi-book. Check the box to post credit card transaction charges and fees to the GL after creation, right? Has an impact if manual payment is set up as credit card, has an impact if the AP bill is paid by credit card, and the setting at the top level applies to all of the entities. So a checkbox there in configure cash management, and then a little bit of detail here to be able to understand more about exactly what this is going to do. Cash books for credit card transactions. And actually, let me go back one slide here. So that here is, this one sentence is a very good little summarization of this process. So instead of having credit card transactions and credit card fees post to the GL after they've been paid off, you can opt to have them post to the GL as soon as they are created, right? So it's getting that information into your general ledger earlier, so that perhaps you have a fuller, a better, a more true set of books. And again, for cash and accrual companies, that can be something that could make a difference. For accrual companies, it's already there. They're really just talking about cash basis organizations. Okay, let's see. So prior to release 4, here in negative lines, credit card charged in cash management, you can see the entry here that is being made, and then the entry down at the bottom through office expense, and you essentially had a debit here to the office expense for $64. And this is for the negative lines. And then after release 4 of 2021 with the negative lines, you can see here the credit card charges there, and we go forward to the next screen. Here's after release 4 2021. Here are the charges inside of the system with those records posted for the cash books, right? So again, if we go back, here's the 750 and the 100. If we go forward here, you see the 750, the 100, the 650 payment to Chase, and you see all these transactions, and then here's your supplies and equipment for equipment rental with the $100 credit that was given, the $750 janitorial expense. So prior to release for 2021, you had here really sort of just a net of the $64 bottom line amount here. Didn't see the full amount of the negative piece. After release 4, you do see the full posting of the negative 100 and the original 750. So still nets out to be the same thing, but you do get more detail in your general ledger for negative lines on credit card transactions. Okay. So reporting. Sage Intacct has always been known for financial reporting. It's always gotten really high marks on websites like G2 Crowd, from AICPA, from just different review websites that might be out there. Always gotten really good marks on reporting, but there's always room to change. And in this particular release, one of those focuses has been on the computation tab. So gives you an ability to name the computation a little better for easier selection on the columns tab. The name is displayed, the description is not, and 30-character max, right? So gives you an ability here really to just have a little bit more control over your computations. So here, for example, you can see divide revenue, revenue percent, and then in the computation on actual column, you do see the names of those computations. So you don't pick computation 1, computation 2, things like that anymore, making it a little easier to maneuver, okay, and to pick those computations. So that's a nice update to have. This is one of the little components that actually is one of my favorite nice to see items that they've added. So one of the things that I will always do during a demonstration to a potential new prospect of Sage Intacct is we'll go through the financial reports, of course, and I'll talk about the ability to schedule them. Well, I always make the comment that, well, gosh, it's really hard, and I can understand that, to think of when and how you might schedule an income statement to go out. You don't know if you're going to close the month on the 8th. You don't know if you're going to close the month on the 9th, the 7th, 3rd. You don't know. So scheduling it out to the 15th really doesn't do you any good because, you know, that's probably a little late and folks are going to want it before then. So it's really hard to schedule income statements and balance sheets. Not anymore. They've given the option now of a recurrence on a schedule to be following the general ledger close. So once you close your general ledger, that will then trigger the financial statements to be sent out. And to be brutally honest, I did not get a chance to test this, so I don't know if they're going to go out immediately or if they're going to go out at midnight or something of that nature. My suspect is that if you close your books at 10 a.m., they will probably not go out until some schedule runs, and typically that runs overnight. So definitely something that can be tested, but I am excited to see this. At least it takes us into a direction where I can say, hey, now you can actually schedule your income statements and you don't have to worry about whether or not their books will be closed. So that's one of my favorite little features in the system. Easier access to libraries in the report center. So before it was a more difficult navigation. Now they have exposed the Quick Start library reports for both the ICRW and the IVE in the drop-down area. And I just want to pause here for a minute. I saw some real reporting using ICRW and IVE basically for the first time at this past Transform conference. So, you know, there again, if you guys didn't attend Transform, it is a fantastic conference. It is actually coming back East Coast next year. So if you want to go, grab those Mickey ears and let's head to Orlando in October of 2022. I will be there with bells on, hanging out with Mickey and Minnie, and of course going to the conference as well. But I saw some really nice strategic type reports done with ICRW and IVE. And I must say I was pretty impressed with what they've been able to do. Those modules have been enhanced greatly since they first came out. And IVE especially has a tremendous amount of similarity to some of the more powerful reporting products that have been out for years or for decades, like your Power BI and things like that. So if you haven't looked at those two reporting components within Sage Intacct, I can tell you I would highly recommend that you look at those and see if there is a benefit for your organization. If you're falling short a little bit in maybe operational reporting, something like that, if you're using inventory, ICRW would be a great benefit to you, for example, for a lot of complex inventory type reports. So I'd take a look at them, and they're actually making the quick start libraries easier to get to and putting more into the quick start libraries all the time. And again, I'll put in another plug here. If you want to see something like that, potentially a great place to see it is going to be in a preview company. So get that email over to Kim, and let's get you guys set up for preview companies. Okay, so accounts payable. What would you expect to be something that you might see in a year-end release for an accounting software system for accounts payable? I'll give you 4 numbers to choose from. 1099, right? So, of course, every year, most every year, there's a potential tweak to the 1099 form and things like that. This year, we are helping you if you made a mistake, already submitted it. We now can accommodate corrected 1099 forms. So no manual work on your part. Correct the information for the vendor. Come into the, when you're doing the 1099s, you come in and you check the box for corrected in that case, and then you produce the corrected 1099s. So we can handle that in Sage Intacct this year, along with all of the changes, any of the changes that were made to the forums. I don't think this year was anywhere nearly as drastic as last year as far as those changes go, but Intacct has you covered, and we now have you covered with corrected 1099s as well. So you can have, you can have custom views now in the approve payments screen, right? You've got your filtering, you've got the ability to see much more information now in the approved payments screen. So this is really super nice to have, gives you a lot more ways to tailor that screen. If you've got a massive number of payments that need to be approved, it is now going to be easier for you to create views and manage that list of things that need to be approved. So bill attachments in the list view. It's only in the top list views, or the canned list views. Opens the attachment container, then you can click on each attachment within it. So if you see this example over here, it is only in the canned views. Unfortunately, it will not be in the ones that you create. I do suspect that will be next. But in these top lists here, you now will have in the list view itself the paperclip icon, the famous traditional paperclip, where you click on this and it opens up the attachment box, and then you can see any and all files that would be attached to that AP bill. So a great first step in the process of making these attachments much easier to get to, making your life simpler, making pulling this kind of information a lot faster is what we have here, and I suspect they will definitely build on that as we move forward with new releases to the software and make them available in any list, for example, and in other areas of the system. So, accounts receivable. Custom aging periods in the printed statements. So now in your printed document template area, you can now incorporate custom aging periods into those. So you can go out into community, you can look for recent information. If you're new to printed document templates, you can go out there, you can search for those things, get more information on the printed document templates. Of course, we're happy to share any information that we would have too. There's a couple of recordings out there for printed document templates, both basic and advanced, but this feature now gives you an ability to have and to utilize custom aging periods on your printed statements. Okay? They're adding functionality to that statement concept. They're trying to make it more powerful and to be something that can be really almost used as a sort of mini collections tool inside of Intacct. Not a full collections tool, but something that certainly will be more usable, right? So in advanced payment summaries here. So if you want to receive an advance, in the old way, you had to go in and select a payment summary. And I remember this being one of the weirdest things when I was running Massey Consulting, and to go in and do the payment, an advance payment, and need to tag it into a payment summary before I could get it into posting into the GL and onto the customer's account and things like that. You know, you had to pick that payment summary, and it was confusing even for me. So, hey, they have now redesigned and updated the advanced screen so that it is much more similar to other functions like receipts, and it is a much clearer process to go through. You do need to go through your AR configuration and just make sure that's up to date and that it is set to use the new payment summaries for advance. But it is a great thing to do, so I absolutely would advocate that everyone go out and do this, even if you don't take advance payments that often. It's a really good thing to do. You get a view with it, you get to add attachments, posting details, which we'll discuss later, and then you know, just this different advanced object can do a lot more with it and will become a lot more of the part of the future updates to the system as well. So might seem like a little change, but I love that little change as well. Okay, so let's talk about the general ledger, the big boy, where everything flows down to, where you get all your financial information, where you've got all of your detail and all of those wonderful little dimensions encapsulated and saved full of data, right? So GL posting details in the subledger module. So release 2 of 2021 introduced the posting details for order entry and purchasing. That was huge to me. As an accountant, as someone who's been in the trade for longer than I'm going to admit to, it was always a little bit odd to me that I couldn't see those posting details in some of the subledger windows. Now you can. In R2, you can see more. And now it's in AP and AR. So there are permission requirements, right? You must have view access to journal entry. So this isn't going to pop in all by itself. So don't flip over right now and go to AP bills, pull up something and look at it. You may or may not have permissions to view access to journal entries. You will need that. So there may be some permission changes needed. And it's only for companies set as accrual. So a boo hiss on that one, right? But you got to start somewhere. So it's out there for accrual companies. There are implications from a cash standpoint with AP and AR. You know, working with accrual companies on this right now, but it's great to see. In accounts payable, it's on bills, adjustments, and posted payments. AR, it's on invoices, advances, and posted payments. So again, part of that reworking of the customer advance screen now gives you the ability, or gives them the ability, to pull that in with all the other components and see those GL posting details. Doesn't show all the dimensional values, but does have a hot link to the full journal entry. Not sure why they call this a hot link instead of a hyperlink, but I left it in their words. And it doesn't show discounts, credits, or exchange gains and losses. So there's still some work to be done to it, but it's really nice to start to see all of that detailed information in the subledger areas. I can't tell you how many times we'd have to kind of go back and forth before R2 of 2021 to look at how things might have posted and where they went and what did you affect. And now it's right there. And now it's right there in AP and AR. Okay. So AP bill entry, excuse me, pre-R4 AP bill entry looks like this, and this is going back to the negatives again, so you've got that negative $60 there, 80, 100, 840, you would see in the pre-R4 GL report, the 740 and the 100. Now you would see the 800, the 100, and the negative 60, and you'd see it broken out into all the different appropriate areas. It would not be consolidated or condensed. In release 4 and beyond, it will show you the full posting that should take place in the general ledger, and that's really good. That's really good. Okay. All right, budgets and spend management have a new home. Great, right? So budgets and spend management. If we go now, you have the ability to have a new area in your menu system, like you see on the left-hand side. It's got its full-blown budgeting area, and I think this is really a sign of the importance that Intacct is placing on budgeting and forecasting. And you know, 2020 was a difficult year. 2021 has been at least an interesting year in a lot of ways, but you know, there was a lot of reforecasting in 2020, a lot of budgets thrown out the window, set on fire, what have you, in 2020. And so Sage is recognizing the fact that budgets have become a much more critical issue. You know, they were critical before, but flexibility in budgeting. And so they're beginning to build this budget repository, so to speak, where they're going to add some different and exciting functionality into the budgets in the near future, as well as, I believe, and this is personally my speculation, they're going to tie it in here even closer to the budgeting and planning tool, or now just called the planning tool for Sage Intacct. So I think we're going to start to see those applications meld together as well too. But that's personal conjecture. That is not anything officially stated by anybody at Sage. Okay. Restriction release. So for NFPs, we've got a wonderful teammate, Althea Sussman. If you haven't met her, she's fairly new to the team. She's been with us for a few months, but she's worked with Intacct for around about 10 years, 9 to 10 years. And she specializes in NFPs. And I mean to tell you, she knows NFPs upside down, backwards, and forwards. And she is as excited about this restriction release feature as a average 4-year-old is on Christmas morning. You know, she likes this feature. I've heard her on calls now talk about this with several nonprofits. I'll admit to not fully understanding the whole thing, but Althea is keenly aware of all the implications of this. If you are a not-for-profit and you want more information on this, send an email to ERP support. Just make the header, you know, R4 restriction release feature, and I am more than certain that Althea would love to have a conversation with you about it. So I'm not going to try to delve too much into this at this point. There is a release demo, as you can see here, that is available, and it is available inside of Intacct. It also will be available, and as you can see here with my mouse, it is hyperlinked into this PowerPoint. So when you get this, you can click here and Intacct will run you through a 7.5-minute demo of it. It is included at no additional cost in the core of Intacct though. So fantastic, fantastic feature. Taking that on the word of Althea. She loves it. So definitely take a look at it. Okay. So then couple of additional features here that just want to talk about, and we will wrap things up. So audit trails in the subledger, open and closed audit trail only shows when the subledger was modified on its own, not when it was closed by the entire general ledger close. Internet Explorer announced retirement, IE is no longer supported as of June 2022. I've had some really good success over the last several months with Microsoft Edge. I shied away from it in the beginning when it was first released, but you know, they've made a lot of improvements to it. I used to be a big Chrome fan, but now I'm pretty much always in Microsoft Edge, and Edge has a Chromium back into it. So even the Chrome store and stuff like that, most of those apps will work in Edge. So I think personally, and I'm not a big Microsoft fan, but I think personally Edge is a good browser and definitely a good replacement for IE. So if you may not be quite happy with Chrome or just want to try something different, Edge is a good choice. There have been some updates to contracts and construction. Don't have anybody on the call that had registered for those, or there are very detailed and minutia changes to those modules. So check the release notes for those, or certainly send in an email to support, erpsupport@ddaftech.com. And if you just want to learn more about the release, we'll be more than happy to spend some no charge time with you to go over the release and the changes and how they might apply to your organization. Those are typically very custom configured modules, and really getting into the detail of a lot of those will be not useless, but confusing. So CSI for electronic payments. This is kind of an appendix type thing here, a little extra. So CSI for electronic payments, if we have anybody doing that, if we got anyone into that early adopter type program, there have been some changes, especially if you have more than one legal entity. So again, here I won't spend a whole lot of time on this because it is a special, at this point it is still a specialized app for Intacct, but if you are in CSI for electronic payments to do those vendor payments online, please let us know. There are a couple of little changes to it, and we'll be happy to go over that with you as well. Okay. So with all that being said, that is it. That's a lot in this release. A lot of changes, a lot of improvements. I personally think some of the smaller changes are some of the better changes inside the system. I'm a huge fan of scheduling reports and automating things. So the ability to schedule the income statements and so forth after the GL close, I think is huge. Nonprofits for the restriction release is huge. Some good changes in inventory that I think reflect a commitment to the inventory module and a focus on getting that in the right position so that it can really be pushed forward there too. But any questions from what we've talked about today?
Currently, there are no questions in the chat, but like I said earlier today, we really recommend you use the chat feature in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen so that we still have a few minutes with Philip.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you. Any questions? Now's the time. You know, anything that you want to ask, anything we talked about, anything you might have seen in the releases that I didn't mention, you know, but let me know if you have anything out there. And certainly you have an ability to email us after the fact as well too. Here's my email address and phone number. So if anything comes to mind afterwards, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are always here to try to help you with things. Okay. All right. Julia, I think that is all that we had. If we don't have any questions, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Thank you so much, Philip. And thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you next month. Thank you so much.